Being Your Best You with Dr. Keir.
I'm exceptional, thank you. How are you today?
I'm so good.
Blocks to bold, brass to gold, better to best. We all get caught in mental mazes, believing that we have to live the way others see us, or being taught to think things through. Dr. Keir is an agent of change using Geotran human programming and activations to quickly and easily release people from the automatic patterns and inner glitches that block their healthy, wealthy, happy life. Instead of going where our innate circuitry takes us. Being in alignment with you is the best way to create your best life. Are you ready to be your best self? Being Your Best You with Dr. Keir. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Welcome again, and I hope you're all doing exceptionally well. I certainly am. And I'm so thrilled that today I'm able to welcome a colleague of mine from the UK. Her name is Sharon Ann Thomas, and she's going to be talking to us about her holistic healing approach, with also with emphasis on the Healy device that can actually work on people from a distance. Now, I am a great believer in distance healing, and that's, of course, what I do myself, although I use very different techniques. And I just know that you're going to be very interested. Certainly I am. And also, let me remind you that whatever clears for us on the program will also clear for you as you're watching, insofar as you have overlaps with that particular issue. So, welcome. Hello. Great to see you. And here's Sharon Thomas. Hi, Sharon.
Hello, we've got a bit of a time difference, so I won't say good evening.
No, it is actually 11 o'clock. It's here in Central Time, south of Chicago. But when I am in France, as I will be from the end of May, then our time zones will be more in alignment. Still, thanks for joining us after what I'm sure was a full day with your own work. So, please tell us about your work. Tell us about what is it you do for people?
Well, I work in a similar way, or with a similar goal to yourself, to allow people to release blocks and just be the best version of them. Also, it's really interesting how I work a little bit more physical with people too. So I have three ways of working. I have people in my physical space, and I will work holistically with them with the frequency device, as you've already mentioned, the Healy. Physical treatments including reflexology and massage to release any blocks in the physical body, and emotionally with the essential oils. So if the client comes to me in person, we go through that type of routine. If a client wants to work with me in a teaching capacity, I also teach Reiki, holistic therapies. So it's really nice to be able to do that as a group or as an individual. And I also do like a journey, so a 3-month package, so people can come and have one-to-one support for 3 months on whatever issues they've got, and that's a possibility of working through other blocks energetically, or just really going on that deeper dive as to what might be holding them back. Sometimes a bit healing from traumatic relationships that they've had in the past. So we can work on many levels.
Mm-hmm. And that's the point, isn't it, really, that we are so convinced that, or we have been persuaded that here we are in the physical, and therefore the physical is really the only thing that is really real, if I can put it that way. Now, my best friends are physicists, and this is very much their approach, and they have no idea of what I can do, what you can do, because it's working in the quantum fields, it's working in the energy fields, and this has a number of different advantages. For instance, any physical condition that we have, any health condition, for instance, that we may have, has to start out, has a cause in the non-physical. Yes, in my world, we would say at the soul level, what you think, feel, believe, and desire. So if we can change it there, then it's very much easier to deal with the symptoms on the physical. That is to say, the cause must have been operating in the soul level for long enough for it to get through into the physical, for it to lower the person's vibration in the physical. Now, once it's in the physical, it's a little more challenging because the energy is slower and heavier. But if we can change it in the non-physical, we can do that as easily as changing your feelings, changing your opinion, changing a belief, changing your mind about something. Do you not find this to be the case?
Absolutely. And the difficulty is when I have people come to me quite often, they're not ready to understand that.
Oh, yeah, I get that a lot too.
The stepping stone work is the massage, the reflexology. They get to trust me with the physical touch. And then we open up a little bit more to that possibility of maybe it's an emotion that's trapped, maybe there's some trauma there. Sometimes it's little baby steps. It's great when I have a client that's ready for that. That's my day made. But quite often you are putting in that other work first, and you're feeling, as you know, I'm a great feeler. That's one of my greatest strengths. I'm a clairsentient, so I feel other people's energy in that way, and I can see where that energy is stuck, but they're not ready to always see that themselves at that point. So we work on a relationship building that little baby steps sometimes. But that is also where the healing comes in, because it's very different to if I say to somebody, I can feel like your heart chakra may be a little low of energy, but when I show them on the scan, it's the difference.
Right. Can you tell us more about the Healy? I mean, I know that I know a little bit about the Healy because I have my very own Healy. However, the Healy comes, I'm just explaining to our listeners, the healing comes in a number of different levels, and I basically have the base level, maybe base +1. Now, I was so intrigued when you and I exchanged some work that you were able to get a scan from me. I mean, I'm 4,000 miles away from you as we speak. And it was showing how full my tanks were, so to speak, based on the chakras. It's a 7-chakra system. And then you could actually apply the energy across the distance to me using the healing device. Now, I am accustomed to working with people across distance, and for both you and for me and for the people we work on, that's really fantastic because we can help a much wider range of people, obviously. But I actually had no idea that the Healy could also sort of project or transmit those frequencies in accordance with its analysis function. Please, could you talk some more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, we've got our little Healy device. And so for me, I went for the professional model because I knew I'd use it in my work. So there's 2 apps. There's a blue app, which is the one I use in the quantum field, and that's a resonance app. So that means we don't have any wires. and we don't have the microcurrent, which is how you use yours. The frequency goes through the bands, the microcurrent, and that makes the shifts. Whereas in the resonance, in the blue arc, it is the quantum principle. It is more in that way of I'm opening up to the energy, you're opening up to the energy, and in that way we can connect and we get the results. So it's quite interesting. I think sometimes it's best to show. So I have a little scan that I did earlier, and sometimes. So that's the only thing with the light.
Not really showing up well.
No, it really isn't. But I can just quickly say that I did an aura scan, and the aura scans are great because they tell us, auras change constantly. Yes. So we can just feel a little bit off every now and then, and sometimes we may be ungrounded. We may just be like out of our heart, out of our crown chakra. So I did a little scan earlier, and I was feeling a little wobbly because we all have those moments. It doesn't matter how much work we do in the field. So I did a little scan, and there was a couple of things that were showing up for me. And what it does, it gives us a little indication of our present state. So sometimes that will read something like, I'm trying to find a nice easy one. This is a very apt one here. The person is controlling their feelings. How many of us are doing that right now? That's just a daily occurrence on occasion. And then the desired state is, I let my feelings flow freely. And once we vibrate that state in, it harmonizes the energy field where that was showing up. Okay. So it just helps to move those states of being, of feeling along so much quicker and with ease and grace, as we often, that's the aim, isn't it? And I know from working with you, we both like to work in a quick and efficient way that causes as least traumatic experience as possible.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that last sentence, please? Because it went out a little bit.
Sure. So we both like to work with ease and grace to cause the body least trauma, so it can harmonize in the kindest possible way.
Yes, exactly. And what you do and what I do, and anybody who works in the energy fields, whether that's from a spiritual point of view or simply at that soul level, we're always looking for how can we reharmonize the resonance, because at least in our world, the resonance is what really changes the other person's field, and that includes the physical, the soul, and the spirit. The spirit is usually in its correct resonance anyway, but people tend to be very blocked at the soul level, so that divine spirit, it struggles to get into the physical, pass through the soul level and into the physical. And this is regardless of what anybody's particular theology or belief system is saying. I'm just talking about the quantum universe here, so it kind of applies to anyone. And we all have this kind of experience. Perhaps we've got a habit of spending time with people who are constantly enraged, or who are constantly depressed, or in some other way have this low frequency, and then our system sort of feels that's what we're wanting it to also express, or at any rate it's receiving it, just like a radio receiver is receiving it, whether it's on purpose or otherwise, or accidentally. And here is the problem, as I think you will agree with, Sharon, that 90%, researchers have shown that 90% of what's going on is subconscious or unconscious, right? So
Absolutely.
mostly people don't even know what they've been exposed to. Yeah, and so they don't know that that's something that they want to change. That's why I think it's so fascinating that, as of course we can use things like intuition, and in my case I do a lot of muscle testing, and you have that empathic capacity, um, but that we actually have a gizmo
Yeah.
to
And
show what these are and how to fix them. Like, that to me is just fascinating.
yeah, it's translating those feelings, the things that in our bioenergetic field, it's putting words to them, which is so incredible. And I've had so many amazing results with that have really supported people, because they can't quite put the words to it. And actually, one thing that's been amazing with this device is for the non-verbal. So
Yes.
I've got a lovely little girl who's about 9, who I work with. It's a friend of mine's daughter, cystic fibrosis, and
Wow.
she cannot communicate verbally, and she is coming to an age where hormones are starting and frustrations are starting, and for her to be able to communicate in that way, or is using the scans for her to be able to, for the emotions to be shown, it's absolutely priceless. It's amazing.
Oh, that's fabulous. That's
Yeah.
so encouraging. Yes. I'm
I
seeing we have
mean,
a question here, if I may. How can you help me avoid negative feelings? Well, what would be your answers there, Sharon?
and they can't be avoided at one point, but what we can do is witness them and see them and bring them into the present, put that light on it. And then when they're there, we can harmonize it. But I see negative feelings more as a positive these days, because it's something that's waiting to be seen. It's something that needs to be addressed. The main thing is it's come up to be seen and healed. Absolutely a positive in my mind.
Yeah. Well, when this avoiding negative feelings, it's actually a very interesting question. From my perspective, again, if we look at people as being simultaneously radio transmitters and radio receivers, then the more time you're spending with people, places, or things that are negative or that bring up negative feelings in you, well, then the more that you're going to be experiencing them, obviously. Um, but so you perhaps need to be a little bit more discerning about the energies that you're exposing yourself to. But also, I think because we each have a negative store, we each have a hard drive, yeah, full of past traumas, negative experiences, and what have you. Just being in the now is tremendously helpful. Just so that you have a choice again. Yeah, instead of being triggered and caught up in something about over which you feel you do not have a choice, you get to say, no, wait a minute, in the now, is this happening in the now? Is this happening in the now? If it isn't, then you say, well, you know what, I'm choosing something better for me in the now. I'm choosing to look outside and saying, oh, the sun's come out for the first time in a week. Yay! Or, oh, those daffodils in front of my house are really very pretty. So that you can actually, switch that once you've noticed it. But you do have to notice it first. I agree.
The interesting thing is about an emotion or a negative feeling, however you want to call it, it's the charge that the human puts on it as to how long it stays in their field. If you have a feeling of sadness and you supercharge that up, I think that, will stay with you. So that's the feeling of, that will just amplify if you put more stuff to it. Whereas if we say to ourselves, oh, this is sadness, that's okay, and not put the charge to it, that's when it's about 90 seconds that we can move through emotions if we do not charge them up. And there's lots of research about that. So yeah, it's how we react, isn't it? How we react to that emotion that comes in, or feeling, however you want to say.
Hmm. Yes, absolutely. And any creation in the field depends on repetition and intensity. Right? So another way of putting that is if you're wanting to create or attract something to you, then you have a mental picture, a visualization of that, and then you pile on the emotion, preferably positive emotion. Yeah.
Yeah,
But if you are walking
absolutely.
around radiating, I'm really afraid to walk down this dark street because someone's going to attack me, and I'm afraid of that. Then that's actually your interpretation of the situation. It's not real. It's real to you, but it's changeable, I guess, is what I'm really trying to say.
Yeah, people would call it a manifestation, wouldn't they? It's almost like you attract that thing to you that's in that field.
Mm.
Um, and really, you're absolutely right. Just reframe that, and hopefully that can
Right.
attract something bigger and better far quicker. So it's noticing it, isn't it? For sure, it's noticing it. And one of the scans that is great for the emotions on the Healy is the Bach flower scan. And obviously, a few people will have heard of Bach flower remedies, but the Healy allows, so every Bach flower remedy that ever was placed into the Healy quantum field, and it has that frequency of that Bach flower. So when we scan the Bach flower as an individual, the Bach flowers come up as top five as to what emotions are showing in the field and what's coming that will harmonise quicker for that person. And then those flowers, those essences will be vibrated into that field. And with ease and grace, harmonise those also. I think again, just with the intention of doing it, makes a massive difference. Just knowing that we've got some capability of switching that around gives us a lot of comfort.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, what brought you into this line of work? I mean, I know that you teach yoga. I know that you are a Reiki master, as indeed I am myself, uh, and massage, of course. So it's on the physical.
Mm.
Did you start out with the physical stuff? Did you start out with the energy stuff? Give us a little history, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. So my journey probably started when I was 19 in America. I got introduced to bioenergetic fields and bioresonance with some books about basically how the body talks to us. And like a sore arm doesn't necessarily mean a sore arm, and how the emotions. So that was my first taste. But I put it aside, I was 19. So when I came back to England, I decided to take another step and do Reiki. And I did my Reiki 1 certificate in 2003. And it was a little overwhelming for me. Maybe I wasn't quite ready at that time, and the guy was in the robes, and it was a little bit like, okay. So although I got the energy aspect, I put it aside. It wasn't for me at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually went and trained as a reflexologist. So I had some reflexology first on myself because I was struggling a little bit with some stress and anxiety. And basically, my company paid for some treatments, and I got the 10 treatments. And it made such a difference to me. It kept me in work. So I decided to train, and so I was building up the portfolio, and then I did Indian head massage because the two came together. And while I was doing the Indian head massage, I became pregnant. I was quite heavily pregnant by the time that finished. So yeah, again, the holistic side just did have to go on the shelf a little, but I was building and building and building all the time until about 8 years ago, I was just like, no, I'm doing this now. It's my time to do what I truly love. My soul was shouting. I was in retail management. It was enough of that field. And yeah, it was definitely not for me any longer. So I took the plunge and I went full time and continued learning. I did my Reiki too, so I had like a long gap, and then did my masters, as you said. But I finished my masters. I did the one training, and COVID happened. So my, as you can imagine, hands-on practice did have to just go to the side. So I took a huge deep dive into Reiki. I was teaching online because I do Holy Fire Reiki, which allows people again to do the teachings through distance. So I was doing that as my main income, and I'm actually then trained to teach the holistic therapies as well. And so that was something that my focus for the COVID time was to learn, so I could then give my expertise, pass that knowledge on, and I was absolutely loving it. But unfortunately for me, a little bit when the world started opening up again, I got busy with the physical work, and so it's just now, this is the time to get that balance back. And I started using the healing a bit more in coaching and in one-to-one really deep dives as to what's stopping people heal, what's the blocks, what's the barriers, what is stopping their progress. And oh, we have another question. So yeah, it's really interesting how again we shift into that side.
Yeah, I really understand that shift because, as you know, I trained as an architect. Yeah, and I trained in the UK. I came back to the US in '92. I was working as an architect, and I was in this little town in Vermont. There were only a couple of architectural practices and not a lot of work. And I ended up writing and editing for a slightly wacko psychiatrist who was interested in the right brain, left brain communication and dowsing and things like that. And I didn't know anything about that stuff. I was so left-brained at that time. It's just insane. And that probably is the exact word. And then, through him, I started learning about some of these non-physical things and actually went and trained as a Reiki master in '94. My word.
Really?
Yeah. I'll always remember the hotel in Boulder I was in. But anyway, hey, we've got a question here. What does the Healy device do and why do I need it? Ah, what a perfect segue. Please tell us more.
Well, the way I use it, for me, I've always had I always want to work with the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being. And the Healy device allows me to do that in a really clear and precise way. Because I could scan and see the things that were in the field that were blocking the physical, which can be the meridians, it can be the bioenergetic field, it can be just something called a deep cycle where it can, you get your brain out a little, but you need a little bit more relaxation, a little bit more care, and a bit more release. That's another thing, isn't it, that we need to do often. So those were the main physical ones, and as I mentioned, the emotional scans are the birch flowers, Australian bush flowers, the Alaskan gems, and the aura scan. So that really harmonises the emotional field. And in the mental field, we have something called creative homeopathy. So you can download homeopathic remedies straight away. into our energetic field, which really take away, the edginess of certain emotions and things that can cause irritation for the mental well-being. And there's a couple of others like the Australian bushflower. There's a few crossovers, of course, that do that too. So, in the spiritual, I find the aura scan great for the spiritual, and that will tell us a little bit of past lives, a little bit of Akashic also. So, for me, it allowed me to be really specific for that client instead of just, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, doing a lot of digging and diving, and, it could be childhood trauma, it could be, that relationship that broke down, that narcissistic relationship that you had, lots of kind of like could be, should be, whereas this gives me the definition. I can just say, okay, in the field, this is what's showing up. And then we can discuss it. We can, even just bringing it up can allow that healing process to start. So that's why I really love the healer, because it's very clear of what it wants to do. Because its job, its sole focus is to harmonize your own bioenergetic field.
Right.
Doesn't want to do anything else. It just wants to do that. And as we grow and understand, that's all humans want to do as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, I seem to remember we were talking about this the other day, because, I have the Healy that just works on the physical, and I has to be connected to my wrists, and I have to be actually sitting still for an hour, which is sort of a challenge. But you were saying that the fellow who invented the Healy, now he's a quantum physicist, right? I mean, he's coming in from the science side. This is not just about your intuition, my intuition, your filters, my filters, the client's filters. This is actually something that is quantifiable because of the device itself. Have I got that right?
Yeah, there's three creators mainly, and the one that you were talking about there is Marcus Schmeickel, and he was a Vedic monk for 20 years, and then retrained as a quantum physicist in his adult years, and they created like a database of frequencies beyond anyone's comprehension called a time waver.
Mm-hmm.
But then Marcus thought, as quantum physicists do, I would like to make this into a wearable device that people can have,
Yeah.
In the palm of their hands. So he wanted to take that entire, or as close as possible, the best options of the time waver into a wearable device. And with the help of Nanu Nina, who has the background in mathematics, system engineering, and biochemistry, and developed the gold cycle that you have. He developed and created that entire program. And there is also another CEO who really focused on the medicine also. So, and there's lots of other people who have put their bit in.
Of course.
But yeah, and these things are really visionary rather than, you've got to have that, haven't you? That drive, that entrepreneurial skill to be able to see that.
Yes.
And that isn't everybody, as we know. So yeah, so thankful for those people who have that vision, who can see what's possible.
Yeah.
These infinite possibilities. It's amazing.
I just really love disruptive technologies, don't you? I mean, and by disruptive, I mean, for example, the telephone, disrupted our whole picture of how communications could happen. And then the cell phone came along, and whoa, suddenly we've got a computer in our pocket with a camera, very important. And in the same way, it seems to me that the Healy is right up there in the forefront on that sort of approaching wave. of how can we reset, as you say, reharmonize those frequencies, and from a distance too, so that people can actually clear blockages, they can clear physical symptoms. Now, just to say, neither you nor I are medical doctors, although reflexology, I think, definitely comes into that field. I am not a medical doctor. My doctorate is in esoteric studies. Woohoo! Uh, but yeah, that we can approach health or improved health and well-being in this way. I think it's just fascinating and very, very productive for us all as
Yeah.
humans. Hey, we got another question here, if I may.
It's evolution, isn't it? And yeah, absolutely. I'd love to answer.
Yeah, it's so good. Okay, the question on my screen is, can you feel the device working on you? Well, I can. Can you?
I was going to say, when you have the wristband, the microcurrent, you definitely can.
Yeah.
It's like a little pulse, isn't it? It's like a tiny, weeny, a little electric pulse. And because there's 9 million different frequencies, of course, on this device, you get in a range. Sometimes you don't feel anything, but then it'll give you a little kick round it, and then because it's harmonizing your field, so it's not just going at like 900 hertz at one time. It's going up and down, and you
Right.
see the frequency like a little wave going, and then you know it's doing what it needs to do. And but with the resonance, the answer is no, because that's the distance. So you don't actually feel the pulse, the vibration, but you feel the shift when it's finished. You feel,
Yes.
a less emotion or, resistance, whatever we want to call it at that time, whatever we're working on. If we're working on a block that, we've rearranged the energy to feel that block just release. So yeah, whichever way you're working, but certainly with the microcurrent, yes, we get a little reminder that we've got it working. It's definitely doing its thing.
Well, you recall the other day when you and I were chatting, and I was saying, I really, really need to get some rest. Somehow I'm not sleeping. I don't know whether it's sort of the energy in the field or it's the stresses in my life or a combination, which is probably closer to the point. And I know that you did some projected energy from me, and I actually, 9 p.m., I was out until 6 in the morning. And this is so unusual for me. So, like you're saying, I didn't feel the pulses while they were happening. But oh, did I enjoy the results?
Yeah, it's the benefits that we want, isn't it?
And actually, you helped me also because you pointed out to me that in my physical Healy, which I can use anytime, obviously, um, that there are actually a couple of sleep programs. So one of the things that I find very interesting about how you work specifically with the Healy, as distinct from the way I work with it, because I only do it personally, is I believe you actually teach this as well. Do you not? That you are, what's the word I'm looking for? You can give people access to their own Healy and teach them how to use it. Is that not
Right.
correct?
I've started, yeah, it seems to be a call for that. I'm always open to whatever people need. So there was the question, do you need the device? Well, if you did want to work with me, we do it remotely. So I would scan, as I did with you, people's field remotely. So that is an option. We can work in that way. Um, and that's really great when you can do that. So yeah, we can. I've just lost my chain on the question. Claire, just remind me.
So I was saying that you actually teach people how to use the Healy as well.
Okay, so yes, I have been doing some coaching because I've had mine for nearly 2 years now, which I am an innovator. I I quite like to get in quite early, but I tested it. I tested it for a long time before I would speak about it, and before, I wanted to make sure it was doing what it said it was going to do. And I have to trust things. It's an investment if you want to buy your own. So I had to know that it was doing what it offered.
Mm-hmm.
And above and beyond, it has been an investment for me for sure. And so I do like to take people who are really invested in certainly the professional level and help them fill in those gaps, because it took me at least a good year to use it, and I was kind of like, let's test this. I had a few people who would use it on treatments but not be, you know, pushing it, or I was testing it. I was testing it. I was like reading the auras and saying, does that resonate? 9 times out of 10, well, mostly 10, it was resonating. But I just wanted to make sure that it was.
Yeah.
So I try to help people who have just got theirs get to that place of trust. The quantum field is still very scary to some people. So yeah, some people will just say to me, well, how can you know that from a device? How can you know that from that little plastic thing? But the technology is not about the actual device. That's just the carrier, but the actual technology is in the download that we've got,
That's right.
the software.
Yeah.
So yeah, people hold it because we've got to, and they think, So yeah, we do meet a bit of resistance when we're way showers for sure, and it's very difficult. So I do help people overcome those barriers as practitioners as well as clients.
Yes, well, definitely. And that's the thing about being on the cutting edge. There aren't many people who do what we do, whether it's you with the Healy or me with Geotran, whatever. So yeah, it takes a while for people at large to understand, and therefore it's very helpful to have people like you and me being there as backup. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And who are using it from the heart, as well, and working from the heart.
Interesting question just come up.
Mm,
It says, explain Reiki. Is it a religion? Okay, I can answer part of that, which
mm,
is no, it's not a religion. It's just a mechanism for getting the divine intelligence of the universe to come through the practitioner into the person, and then that energy will go wherever it needs to go. It's an intelligent living energy, and it will go wherever it needs to go to reharmonize. Now, would you like to explain Reiki? That's the religion
yeah.
part, or not religion part.
Sure, I like to see myself as a channel, like a lot of people when I'm teaching or when I'm giving Reiki treatment. As you already said, I just open up to the highest energy possibly available. I kind of go into the no mind state. So, in some way, I'll go into a meditative state.
Uh-huh.
So some people could describe it as trance healing. It's very close to a few other types of healing. I also do quantum healing, so kind of like I've weaved a few things into my own way of working.
Mhm.
But I am the channel, I am the bamboo shoot, and the energy is just coming through. And as you said, whether it's physically applied or through distance, doesn't matter when your intention is for that person to receive and get their most highest benefit for them, you are focusing on that intention, and you are focusing but not going into the real effort, because you've got to stay in the zone. You've got to stay
Yeah.
in that,
Yeah.
meditative state. So through the trust of our lineage, and sometimes you have to read it a few times when you first start using Reiki that this will work. Because again, it needs an element of belief, doesn't it? It needs an element because it's quantum. So in that essence, yeah, if you have had the attunement from someone who was attuned, and they call it a lineage, and you are on the lineage and you had your attunement, you can channel the Reiki energy, and that's what we do.
Yeah.
And then when I attune people in teaching, that's what I enable them to do also, to channel the Reiki energy for them as Reiki 1 practitioners, and then perhaps to others, clients as Reiki 2 practitioners, and then in the masters, it's really deep dive of the healing your own blocks, limiting beliefs, and dormant self, bringing that true, authentic self through. So it goes in stages, and again, that has to be respected, because you can't just go from 1 to 3. You've got to go through the steps, and there's a 6-month kind of wait from Reiki 2 to the Reiki Master for a reason, because again, you don't want to overwhelm your system. So it's really nice that it is an honouring of the energies, and but when people do become a master, then they in turn can teach if they choose to. So it's a nice cycle that repeats and continues. And back in the day, as you'll remember, like a long time ago, Reiki was like £10,000 to do.
Yeah.
It was a lot of money, and that's how we've expanded. A couple of people came in and thought, well, we want this to grow faster, and we can't do that when it's £10,000, so they had to make an adjustment. So thankfully now it's not that, which is great. But it still needs to be honoured and respected.
Absolutely. But it is not a religion in the sense of being a belief system that either includes or excludes any other religion or belief system. It is a mechanism. And then we need to respect that mechanism for sure.
Yes. And in the Reiki masters, we do harmonise any religious trauma or anything that comes up that's caused disharmony. So we do look at it like that, but it's more just letting go of things that are no longer serving you. That's the main thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And myself, that was my sort of entry point into this whole world of energy healing or resonance healing or whatever word you want to use to describe it. And what I found, just because my personality delights in the details and how the details come up to make the big picture. In human design, we would say that I have that planning channel. It was very exciting for me when I then found Geotran, because Geotran is like the other end of that particular spectrum. So Reiki is like, okay, we're just going to put your hands on you. So it's hands-on healing, basically. And we're going to open up that channel, and then that's going to send the energy through. It's very non-specific. Geotran is very, very specific, and that's what I like about it. But each has its merits, and together, of course, they're even more powerful. It's like a synergistic relation. Yeah, and I feel like that about the I feel like that about the Healy too. Is that it's very specific, and I like that.
It's a nice combination, isn't it? It's a lovely, and that's what we're doing more so now. We're combining things to get to the highest and greatest good, because we want things to be harmonised quicker. So if that means an essential oil be added, or a bit of reflexology, or whatever mode of healing or opening holistic therapy, it's getting the result which is right for that client. And I do have a good skill these days, because I've been doing it long enough now, is to know how to get that person to that place.
Yeah.
And it's reading them, isn't it? In some ways, reading their energy, and sometimes they just want to talk for quite some time before you do anything, and that's also okay. But often I'll at least get my hands onto the feet, because on the soles of the feet and on the soles on their hands, you've got the meridians. And when we work with the meridians directly,
Yeah.
with the pressure, a little bit like acupressure. You release toxins, you release blocks, you release energy. It's about getting the energy flowing, and that's all we ever want to do.
Yeah. So speaking of which,
Mhm.
I would just love it if you had maybe a little technique that you could show our listeners, our viewers, that like a takeaway, like something that you can demonstrate, and then they could be doing with you right now as they're watching, that would help either the harmony in their field, or to de-stress them, or in some other way be of benefit in a way that they could probably perceive it pretty much immediately. Is there something you can show us?
Yeah, that's fine. I think that's a great way to work actually with the hands. So if you feel like you need a little bit of TLC and you could get an oil, that would be great. I happen to have some oil just here, so but it's not necessary. You can pop a little bit of oil on just to make it a bit smoother.
Okay.
And the hand reflexology is the same as the feet, so the points are in the same place pretty much, roughly. I know it's difficult because you've got slightly longer digits and things like that, but in essence. And the thing that a lot of people are struggling with right now is dreamers, burnout, a little bit of,
Yeah.
fight or flight, whatever you want to say there. But I see that with clients with the reflexology. So when I'm doing the points on the feet, what I will feel is that they will be quite hard, they will be quite like a little key underneath when the adrenals are heightened. So when it gets to that point, I know that they just need those calming down. So I'll show people the point on the hands and roughly around because everyone's a little bit different.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to get the positioning right. So just on the little crease that is just below the
Yeah.
thumb, the thumb
Okay.
line here. So you've got just in the middle there. So in the middle, if you
Uh-huh.
press and hold that, that
Oh,
is
which
working
is a
on
little bit
the
painful, which normally
so
indicates that it needs a little work.
absolutely.
It's not very painful. It's
Yeah.
just a little.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's what you would maybe feel a little bit of discomfort.
Ooh. Yeah.
And
Talk
yes,
about
maybe
feeling
this,
it while you're doing it. It's like, whoa. Okay.
yeah, we can often have a release there, that's for sure. And if you wanted to just double make sure that you had the point, because of course, if we're not as sensitive, then we just put the two fingers in there
Yeah.
and you can just maybe go up and down the line and just make sure that you've got that point covered because you're also working a little bit on the stomach line also.
Mm-hmm.
And if you felt like you needed to extend that a little bit, we've got the thyroid, the parathyroid, and all the way up to the brain here on the
Oh,
thumb. So we
okay.
can just give that little pinching kind of movement with the fingers, and you're working on the
Oh.
brain when you get to the top.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the brain can sometimes, and that is the same with the fingers also. So if you wanted to work on the brain, if you had a headache or if there was a lot of tension going on, work on the tips of the fingers. But then you're working on the pineal gland a little bit lower, and then the pituitary gland a little bit lower, and then we're coming to the thyroid here. So you're working on those really important parts of the brain
Yeah.
and the endocrine system. And we can just give that a nice little massage and then maybe a bit
Okay.
of a press and hold. But working on those points makes a huge difference because we are unfortunately a little bit wired at the moment. We have got heightened adrenals and then of course that brain connection
Mm-hmm.
too.
Right. Hey, let me just ask you a question, if I may. I have a client also in Europe, and she has just the most terrible headaches. Is there any particular point that might perhaps give her some relief? Because I'm sure plenty of people listening also have headaches. What would that be?
Sure. Yeah, the brain. And sometimes it can be sinus related also. So using the tips of the fingers, but you can also come down a little bit lower. So if they can reach their own feet and do it with the top of the toe, massaging the toes is absolutely amazing because you've got that pituitary, you've got all those things as we had in the thumb.
Right. Like the tips of the fingers. Yeah.
Absolutely. So if you can do the toes, I find that a little bit more effective, but the fingers do work just as well. You've got your sinuses, you've got, sometimes a little bit of stress there too, which can cause the headaches as well. So,
Right. Okay. Well, I'll pass that on to her, and I hope that she will actually watch this program because she did ask for when it was going to be aired, and we don't exactly know yet, but it'll be sometime in April, and I'm sure everybody will find it very interesting. So this is, I think the work you do is fabulous. I've certainly experienced the effects myself, and it works well with other modalities too, which is always good because people, people are so individual that it's nice to know that things can work together as a synergistic creation. Are there any thoughts that you'd like to leave our audience with today?
well, just that really, it's about taking that first step. Working on yourself is about taking that first step. However that is, whether it's, a call or going to visit a practitioner and just getting a little bit of support because we have had a lot going on. Most people have faced quite a few things and they may have just pushed it aside or brushed it aside, but really we do want to bring the central nervous system down and just come to that place of peace and balance. And there's plenty ways to get there. But sometimes it's just about stepping off, isn't it? Stepping out of that zone, just taking those breaths. And from there, we can make clearer decisions about our health, our wellness, and what we need to look at going forward. Yeah.
It really all
Yeah.
starts with that self-love, doesn't it? It's like, do you care enough about yourself to at least ask the question, is there something I can do or I can experience? Even if it's not what I usually think of, that's going to
And that,
bring you into harmony.
yeah, and I'll even admit, even as a holistic practitioner, the self love piece was one of the hardest things to do. It's not easy work. So to put your hands up and say, oh, I need to take this time for myself, is so important. And then the true healing and being the best version of yourself can start occurring.
There it is. Oh, Sharon, thank you so much for coming on today. I really, really appreciate it. And I look forward to our continued association. To everyone listening, thank you. Thank you for switching on. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week. This is Dr. Kier saying, bonne journée. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye.